Here we will discuss about self and self-awareness and some related concept of it. Self-concept is everything that an individual thinks and feels about himself. It is the mental picture one develops for himself. It can be positive or negative, accurate or inaccurate. It is a warm, central and private part of our life. It plays a crucial role in one's consciousness, a concept broader than self. In one's personality, a concept broader than consciousness. And in one's organism, a concept broader than personality. Self-concept is extremely important to understand personality patterns. It is composed of moderately permanent self-assessment like personality traits, awareness of one's skills, capabilities, profession, physical attributes, and hobbies. For instance, the statement, "I am not good looking," is a self-assessment which contributes to the self-concept, whereas the statement, "I am tired today," would not be regarded as a part of someone's self-concept because being tired is not a permanent state. Even though self-concept is regarded as moderately permanent self-assessment, in some cases it may change with time. Usually, self-concept changes when the person is going through a difficult phase of identity crisis or is in the process of reassessment. Self-concept. Self-concept is a person's opinion of himself, such as his perception of his persona, physical characteristics, skills, principles, goals, and roles. Ideal self. Ideal self is the accumulation of perceptions of what a person aspires to be and what he believes he should be. Self-esteem. Self-esteem is a person's overall evaluation or appraisal of his or her own worth. Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and actions and loving oneself. Self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the knowledge or understanding of one's own nature, abilities, and limitations. Self-awareness. Self-awareness is recognition of our personality, strengths, weaknesses, likes and dislikes. Impression management. Impression management is the activity in which information is controlled to guide others' opinion for personal or social goals. Attitude. Attitude is a mental state of readiness, organized through experience, exerting a specific influence upon a person's response to people, objects, and situations with which it is related. Self-concept is a person's opinion of himself, such as his perception of his persona, physical characteristics, skills, principles, goals, and roles. Most of the people identify us with our body features, external personality, and socialization skills, but this is not the way we experience selfhood. The three major components of self-concept are perceptual, conceptual, and attitudinal. The four categories of self-concepts are basic self-concept, transitory self-concept, social self-concept, and ideal self-concept. Self-esteem is a person's opinion about himself or herself. It is a term used in psychology to reveal a person's overall evaluation or appraisal of his or her own worth. Self-image is how we see ourselves. This may be how we see ourselves physically or our opinion of who and what we are. Self-acceptance means accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and actions and loving oneself. Being is the fundamental reality and becoming is an effectual reality. Self-schema refers to the beliefs and ideas which one has about oneself. These beliefs are used in order to guide and organize the processing of information, especially when the information is related to the self. Self-knowledge is the knowledge or understanding of one's own nature, abilities and limitations. In the field of philosophy, self-knowledge usually refers to a person's knowledge about his mental states such as his beliefs, aspirations and feelings. Self-awareness means recognition of our personality, strengths, weaknesses, likes and dislikes. It is a prerequisite for effective communication and interpersonal relations, as well as for developing empathy for others. Self-awareness helps us in improving our life and makes us aware of our strengths and weaknesses. According to Albert Bandura, self-effectiveness is the belief in one's capabilities to organize and execute the course of action required to manage prospective situations. Self-presentation is a way in which a person behaves in a given social situation. People's self-presentations often represent the choice of the most desirable images from a set of alternative images. Self-monitoring can refer to monitoring competence or emotional self-regulation. Some people are high self-monitors, whereas others are low self-monitors. Self-monitoring means that a person pays attention to those behaviors or habits in him which he feels are problematic and need to be changed. Impression management refers to the activity in which information is controlled to guide others' opinion for personal or social goals. Attitude is defined as a more or less stable set of disposition of opinion, interest or purpose involving expectancy of a certain kind of experience and readiness with a suitable response. Values, according to Milton Roques, represent basic convictions that a specific mode of conduct or instead of existence is personally or socially preferable to an opposite or converse mode of conduct or instead of existence. Achievement behavior is an important part of self-development. When a person achieves something, he feels motivated to learn more so that he can achieve mastery in that field. Frustration is a type of stress which occurs when one's efforts remain unfulfilled, dissatisfied either by obstacles or by non-appearance of appropriate goal. Failure refers to the state or situation of not meeting a desirable or intended objective and may be seen as the opposite of success. Any event that leads to an unbalanced and dangerous situation is known as crisis. Crisis may affect an individual, group, community or whole society, especially when they occur with little or no warning. When a person knows that he is not perfect, gradually he learns to accept other people's faults as well. In this way, self-awareness also makes a person tolerant. If a person is honest, he will not try to defend himself when other people criticize him because he is aware of his weaknesses. In this situation, a person would become more aware of himself when he acts on the feedback of other people. Self-monitoring refers to monitoring competence or emotional self-regulation. Quantitative monitoring and qualitative monitoring are two important types of self-monitoring. Internal behaviors are difficult to self-monitor, like whether a person is sweating to sorry, sweating or has fast heartbeat doing anxiety or stressful conditions. Understanding the self as a whole. All of us tend to relate our experiences to the idea of self. The word I is what we identify ourselves with. Most of the people identify us with our body features, external personality, and socialization skills, but that is not the way we experience selfhood. People around us cannot observe our inner self. Due to this fact, social sciences do not consider inner self in their studies. Psychological theories also concentrate only on the external aspect of human beings. Science compartmentalizes human beings for analytical purposes. Few subjects consider self as a whole. There are a number of incompatible schools and subdisciplines these days which are playing a major role in making irrelevant and quantitative research methods rampant. Psychological sciences do not use common sense and human touch in order to understand human beings. It only talks about abstract things which are not practical in everyday life. Many people who specialize in psychology and psychiatry usually deal with people with mental and emotional problems and help them to a great extent. However, the problem arises when they generalize the problems of these special cases and apply their observation of these cases to whole of humankind. There are many approaches to deal with a particular investigation. Thus, the approach chosen by an investigator affects the outcome of the investigation, which may or may not be right. There are many approaches which are short-sighted and do not result in appropriate outcomes. The scientific methods which use the past experiences for their studies look backward and not forward. For example, they do not look at the future. Thus, we require a far-reaching psychology, which can explain the structure of human psyche as well as the main highway of self-realization. This kind of psychology would help us understand human beings as complete individuals who are completely integrated with the whole self. The effort to understand the human state from an unbiased, value-free position has not been able to bear fruit till now. It is believed that it is almost impossible to develop an entirely objective scientific theory which can explain the whole self. This belief is based on the fact that there is a vast variety of individual variables within each society and culture. In addition to this, it is almost impossible to predict human actions since some situations and events in their life can change their standpoints. We can understand ourselves through self-knowledge, self-awareness, and self-inquiry. Many people who have tried to understand the inner reality by using spiritual theory believe that it is almost impossible for external observer to understand us. Thus, we can conclude that insight into human nature is not possible without self-observation. Unless psychologists consider this fact in their empirical studies on human as a whole, psychology would turn out into a collection of unrelatable hypotheses. Meaning of self. The purpose of understanding self is to know one's real or ultimate identity, to answer the question, who am I? In terms of both individual and collective knowledge, we may think that we are aware of who we are, but that may not be the case. A lot of us do not know who we are. Not being aware of one's identity is dangerous because the question, who am I, is related to other questions like why was I born and what is the purpose of my life. Thus, if a person does not know himself, he would live in a dream state where he would identify himself as someone who he is not. In this case, the person would not be able to make right goals for his life as he is under a false identification. The questions related to true identity and purpose of life are not answerable purely or even primarily on the basis of subjective experiences. For example, being the subject of collective efforts of the many sciences and related disciplines. Subsequently, as conceptions developed through knowledge and experiential understanding, the personal realization of this individual identity within the whole of existence becomes much more embracing than in the beginning. These answers help in determining a person's progress and success. If unanswered, life might seem a nightmare towards the last stages of life. Thus, it is extremely important to know oneself. Self-concept. Self-concept is a person's opinion of himself, such as his perception of his persona, physical characteristics, skills, principles, goals, and roles. Right from the infancy, children understand the relation between the self and their social world by comprehending information as to what others think of them. A child's relationship with his family members and peers and his emerging cognitive skills help in the formation of self-concept in him. During early childhood, self-concepts in children revolve around some concrete characteristics such as physical characteristics, belongings, and abilities. During middle childhood, children clearly perceive the self as consisting of internal and psychological characteristics. During late childhood and adolescence, the self-concept becomes abstract and complex. According to Jarsid, the self includes a person's understanding of individual existence and is related to his inner world. It includes a person's beliefs, feelings, expectations, fears, fantasies. It is a person's outlook of what he is, what he was, and what he can become in future. Self-concept is the cognitive aspect of self. For example, it is related to one's self-image and usually refers to the totality of a complex, organized, and dynamic system of learned beliefs, attitudes, and opinions that each person holds to be true about his or her personal existence. Components of self-concept. There are three major components of self-concept. Number 1, perceptual. Number 2, conceptual. Number 3, attitudinal. Number 1, the perceptual component. It is the person's conception about the appearance of his body and the impression he makes on others. It is often called his physical self-concept. Number 2, the conceptual component is the person's image about his unique characteristics, his abilities, disabilities, and origins. It is often called the psychological self-concept and is composed of qualities like honesty, self-confidence, independence, courage, and the opposites of these qualities. Number 3. The attitudinal component is a person's feeling about himself, his attitude, his present status and future prospects, and his outlook of self-esteem, self-approach, pride and shame. It also includes one's beliefs, convictions, values, ideals, aspirations, etc. Kinds of self-concept. James Harry was the first to suggest that a person has many selves. The real self is what a person really believes he is. The ideal self is what a person aspires to be. Social self is what he believes others think of him and how they perceive him. The four categories of self-concepts are: number 1, basic self-concept; number 2, transitory self-concept; number 3, social self-concept; and number 4, ideal self-concept. Let us discuss in details. Number 1, basic self-concept. It corresponds to the real self. For example, the person's concept of what he really is. It includes his perception of his appearance, his recognition of his abilities, beliefs, aspirations, etc. The basic self-concept tends to be realistic. The person sees himself as he really is, not what he would like to be. More often, the person tends to find flaws in himself, which makes him unhappy and dissatisfied. Number 2, transitory self-concept. In addition to the basic self-concept, a person has a transitory self-concept. It is referred to the self he hopes he now is and the self he fears he now is. Transitory self-concept may be favorable or unfavorable, depending largely on the situation in which the person really is. It is generally influenced by the passing mood, emotional state or recent experience. A person who is healthy and happy and is able to achieve what he has set out to do may have a transitory self-concept that is more favorable than his basic self-concept. Number 3, social self-concept. It is an individual's opinion of how others perceive him depending upon their speech and actions. It is called mirror image. Since social self-concepts develop from social interactions, the concept will favorable or unfavorable depending upon how the social group treats the individual. In early childhood, when a child is not capable of assessing himself, he thinks of himself as he believes others think of him. His social self-concept is thus dominant. If a child is accepted and respected for what he is, he would acquire an attitude of self-acceptance and respect. However, if his parents, his teachers, peers, and other people blame him or reject him, his attitude towards himself is likely to become unfavorable. Number 4, ideal self-concept. It is the accumulation of perceptions of what a person aspires to be and what he believes he should be. It may be related to physical self-image, psychological image, or both. It may be realistic if it is within the reach of the person, or it may be unrealistic that can never be achieved in real life. The ideal self represents the set of traits, competencies, and values an individuals would like to possess. The ideal self-concept is likely to be realistic if the basic self-concept dominates, because basic self-concept is based on the realistic appraisal of one's capabilities. If it is unrealistic, the ideal self-concept will primarily depend on whether the transitory self-concept is favorable or unfavorable. Ideal self, what we would wish to be. If there is a lot of mismatch or difference between ideal self and real self, it is likely to influence how much a person values himself. There is a close relation between self-image, self-esteem, and ego ideal. When a person's ideal self is not consistent with his real self, it results in incongruence. However, when there is consistency between a person's ideal self and real self, a set of congruence exists. Existence of total state of congruence is rare, as everyone experiences some amount of incongruence. According to Roger, there must be a state of congruence for a person to achieve self-actualization. Self-esteem. Self-esteem is a person's opinion about himself or herself. It is a term used in psychology to reveal a person's overall evaluation or appraisal of his or her own worth. Self-esteem encompasses beliefs and emotions such as triumph, despair, pride, and shame. High self-esteem is a good opinion of oneself, and low self-esteem is a bad opinion of oneself. Self-esteem is crucial and is a foundation of a positive attitude towards life. It influences how one thinks, acts, and relates to other people. Low self-esteem results in poor confidence and causes negative thoughts. People with low self-esteem give up easily and find it difficult to face challenges. Self-esteem is the disposition of experiencing oneself as competent in coping with the basic challenges of life and as being worthy of happiness. There are two components to Brandon's definition. The first he calls self-efficacy, confidence in the functioning of my mind, in my ability to think, understand, learn, choose, and make decisions. Confidence in my ability to understand the facts of reality that fall within the sphere of my interests and needs. Self-trust, self-reliance. The second is self-respect. Self-respect means assurance of my value, an affirmative attitude towards my right to live and be happy, comfort in appropriately asserting my thoughts, wants, and needs. The feeling that joy and fulfillment are my natural birthright. Low self-esteem is the result of a poor self-image. Self-image is based on how one sees oneself. Do you think you are a good, trustworthy, diligent, sincere, or sociable person? Do you believe you look good, or you feel that others look better or dress better than you do? Job factors can affect your self-esteem. Do you value the job you do? Are you satisfied with your job? Do your colleagues respect you? If you have high self-esteem, you will be confident, happy, and highly motivated to succeed. Self-image. Self-image is how you see yourself. This may be how you see yourself physically or your opinion of who and what you are. Self-image is important as it affects your self-esteem and confidence. Self-image includes what you think you look like, how you see your personality, what kind of person you think you are, how much you like yourself or you think others like you, your perception of what others think of you, the status you feel you have. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Image is about how you see yourself and how you believe others see you. These are closely connected because if you have a poor opinion of yourself, your self-esteem would be low. Image is related to perception. Your perception about yourself affects how you behave, think, and relate to others. Your confidence depends on your self image. Your perception about yourself is different from others' perception about you. Your view of yourself is a distorted one, as you would see yourself in a positive or negative light according to your level of self esteem. Ways to improve self image. List down all the things that you like about yourself, like your looks, personality, and abilities. Focus on your positive thoughts and try to forget the negative things that happen to you. Note down when people compliment you. Find out why you perceive yourself the way you do. Make changes that you feel would help you improve your self-image. For instance, clothes, looks, hairstyle, and outlook towards things. Take feedback and criticism in a positive manner and try to improve yourself. Take yourself less seriously and cheer up. Take challenges to surprise yourself. Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance means accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and actions and loving oneself. Self-acceptance entails our willingness to experience, that is, to make real to ourselves without denial or evasion that we think that what we think, feel what we feel, desire what we desire, have done what we have done, and are what we are. Acceptance exists at the core of our being. We can choose to accept ourselves as we are without focusing too much on our weaknesses. For self-acceptance, first we need to recognize the things that we are not able to accept about ourselves. We need to examine each of these things and find out the beliefs that are stopping us to accept those things. Then, one by one, scrutinize each issue and try to resolve it. Be aware of yourself and your beliefs. Check your honesty level. Make sure and accept that you are giving your best. Relax your value judgments. Scrutinize your guilt feelings and try to remove them. Find out the things that motivate you. There are two steps to accept yourself. First, you have to make a choice that you want to accept yourself. Once you are able to make this decision, you need to be aware about it always, i.e., in your day-to-day life. Observe yourself and do not judge yourself all the time. Self-observation without judgment will help you see yourself as you are, with your strengths and weaknesses. Self-acceptance is one of the most important steps for a healthy self-esteem. It would help you love what you like and sense what you want to sense.
Self as being and the process of becoming. We all know that being is the fundamental reality. Becoming is an effectual reality. It is a dynamic power and result, a creative energy and working out of the being, a constantly persistent yet mutable form, process and outcome of its immutable formless essence. Being represents having awakened your entire energy body. It is a radically different state of consciousness than normally found in daily life. It does not mean you are not aware of ordinary rigors, rather it means you are aware. In Being and Time, philosopher Martin Heidegger offers three basic suppositions needed to explore being. First, citing theoretical inquiry from Plato, Aristotle, and Hegel, Heidegger regards being as the most universal concept and yet, through Through centuries of investigation, it has hardly been understood. Second, by nature, it cannot be defined, but this does not negate its meaning. Third, the quality of existence is self-evident. In each and every act, we use some aspect of being. Furthermore, he considers being as a unitary phenomenon and states that in order to study it, we must an ontological world that includes being in the world. With this grounding, Heger then declares that the new significant relationship which being offers enable us to rise above the worldly nature of life. He outlines being as requiring the understanding of one from within daily life, as only then we can rise above this baseline state. Living in the moment characterizes being, and the moment at hand is the crossroads for potential and actualization. The moment is where life resides. Getting there and then saying there requires serious and disciplined efforts, as being is among the most sophisticated of all human behaviors. Being may also be as a constant state of heightened consciousness. It requires the synthesis of learning and imagination, a condition of full living. Your first and second energy fields communicate and work together to give you a full body sense of living. This provides you posture and orientation to navigate infinity. The practice of heightened awareness takes you to more possibility, to being able to handle a variety of assemblage point positions. You experience a continually expanding world of new perceptions and abilities. In furthering our understanding of this awareness, psychologist Abraham Maslow mapped B-cognition being related cognition in detail, assigning characteristics and values to a range of behaviors including problem solving, creativity, and peak experiences, whereas he relates decognition to deficit needs. Some of the traits of B-cognition are total attention, richer perceptions, an altered state of time and space, and positive experience. The attendant values include a sense of oneness, equality, beauty, simplicity, and independence. B-cognition is a measure of self-actualization and a source of creativity. Maslow maintains that self-actualization is everything that a person can become, an ultimate achievement. However, we cannot see what we can become because we are dominated by needs that pull us constantly. Maslow is well known for his hierarchical depiction of deficit and growth, which offer a part of learning, of becoming. Becoming necessitates constant venturing into the unknown. It suggests the ability to move towards or maintain being, a means of moving with life's experiences by saturating yourself in each moment and at the same time by completely letting go of each moment. It is an unfolding. The conditions of your life originate from that moment. Learning is becoming, and vice versa. Maslow asserts that being and becoming are not contradictory or mutually exclusive, and that both are rewarding. Simultaneously, connecting with potential and allowing that connection to give rise to actually are required in both of them. Maintaining being requires constant becoming, and constant becoming takes you being. Neither is static, excessively close, or dogmatic. The two take root from a continual dance with learning and imagination, with potential and with infinity. In this dance, You entertain possibilities and move towards those that resonate with core. But if you identify too much with your goals, you will once again pin perception to the definition, to the thoughts rather than to the experience. That prevents you from awakening completely, removing you from the very essence of the venture. You then yield to closure, to something awareness whose blocks becoming. Schema. Self-schema refers to the beliefs and ideas which one has about oneself. These beliefs are used in order to guide and organize the processing of information, especially when the information is related to the self. Self-schemas are significant to one's overall self-concept. A self-schema leads to a prejudice, which is self-perpetuating. This can be about a person's role in the family or his role in the society based on some social stereotypes. For instance, if a mother tells her son that he looks like a journalist, her son might respond to this statement by doing things that he feels all journalists do. On the other hand, if a mother tells her daughter that she looks like a princess, her daughter might choose to be feminine or to think the way she thinks princesses do. The self-schema becomes self-perpetuating when a person performs activities based on people's expectations instead of desires. Multiple self-schemas. Schematic. It means having a schema for a specific dimension. People are self-schematic on dimensions which are significant or crucial, or dimensions for which they feel they can go to extreme. For instance, passion for becoming a educator, notions of freedom, etc. They tend to use their schemas in order to filter any information, and they scrutinize the information which is related to their schemas. In addition to this, human beings tend to notice those attributes in other people for which they are schematic. Aschematic. It is the opposite of schematic. Thus, it means not having a schema for a specific dimension, a dimension that people have not invested in or are not involved with.
Self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the knowledge or understanding of one's own nature, abilities, and limitations. In the field of philosophy, self-knowledge usually refers to a person's knowledge about his mental states, such as his beliefs, aspirations, and feelings. Many philosophers believe that there is a notable difference between self-knowledge and knowledge of the external world. Here the external world also includes others' thoughts. However, there is a little agreement among them about what exactly is the difference between the two concepts. Perhaps that is why various philosophers endorse competing accounts on how to acquire self-knowledge. The concept of self-knowledge is often a mystery to many people. Throughout life, people try to acquire self-knowledge as much as they can. People believe that it is possible to acquire self-knowledge from a number of sources like thinking when you are alone, communicating to other people, etc. All these ways are significant if you want to understand yourself completely. Thinking when you are alone helps you understand yourself in a better way because it is easy to concentrate on thoughts. Past deeds an universal phenomenon when you are alone as there are no distractions around you. However, communicating to other people is equally important. Talking to people can help you in looking at things and notions from a different perspective. These perspectives can help in understanding and examining your own personality. Similarly, reading about people's internal struggles can also be helpful in acquiring self-knowledge. Some of the ways to acquire self-knowledge are: seek feedback from people you trust without being defensive. You can ask them various questions like, what according to you is the right way to deal with this situation? How would you
handle such situations, etc. Their answers would help to understand how they perceive you. However, if you start justifying yourself when they answer you, you may not receive honest answer in future. Try to find out people's opinion about various behaviors, attitudes, and values. You may also seek their opinion about various personal skills depending upon your strengths and weaknesses. Their opinion about this might you understand the area you need to improve on. It is extremely important to meet new people and visit new places like different markets, social gatherings, etc. Once you start spending time with new people, you might understand yourself better. Talking to people does not mean that you sense yourself completely as per their perceptions and expectations. You would be able to acquire knowledge when you reflect on their opinions without trying to defend yourself or them. Your unbiased reflection of your behavior and people's opinion would help you understand yourself. Next is self-awareness. Self-awareness means recognition of our personality, strengths, weaknesses, likes and dislikes. Developing self-awareness can help us identify when we are stressed or under pressures. It is also a prerequisite for effective communication and interpersonal relations, as well as for developing empathy for others. In order to build high self-esteem and develop self-confidence, you should be aware of yourself. The following list is the prerequisite of self-awareness. What is your aim and goal? What are your strong and weak areas in your personal and professional life? What kind of things and events make you happy or sad? What are the values, philosophies and belief systems that govern your life? What traits in you help you in your achievement? What traits in you help you in your achievement? What traits in you resulted in your failures and how can you improve those traits? How do you relate with people around you? How do you deal with various people, things, events and situations? What is your perception about yourself? Sometimes people confuse the concepts behind self-awareness and selfishness. However, these concepts are completely different. Being selfish means that a person thinks only about himself or herself, whereas being self-aware means that you know yourself and are always in the process of developing yourself. Self-awareness helps you in understanding yourself and in building self-confidence and self-esteem. When you have a good relation with your own self, it would help you establish strong relationship with other people too. Importance of self-awareness. Self-awareness helps you in improving your life and makes you aware of your strengths and weaknesses. It also assists you in making an informed choice about your career, since you are aware of your goals, strengths and weaknesses. Self-awareness would help you choose a profession which would enrich your life and make you happy. Many a times when a person is not aware of himself, he is unable to accept his weaknesses and this results in bitter relations with other people. However, if you are self-aware, you would be able to accept your mistake, apologize and move ahead without causing any bitterness in life. Acceptance of others' opinion helps you see others' perspective and make you empathetic towards them. In addition to this, being aware of your weaknesses would help you improve yourself. Self-awareness also makes you tolerant. When you know that you are not perfect, gradually you would be able to accept other people's faults as well. Next, enhancing self-awareness. Various experiences in life help you become self-aware. When you know that you want to improve yourself, you would try to learn not only from your own mistakes but from others' mistakes as well. Apart from these, there are many ways to enhance self-awareness. Some of these ways are as follows. Number 1. Follow good values. If you want to enhance your self-awareness, it is important for you to be humble, honest, and ambitious. Humility would help you accept your mistakes without justifying yourselves. Thus, it would become easy for you to accept criticism and suggestions to improve yourself. If you are honest, you will not try to defend yourself when other people criticize you, since you are aware of your weaknesses. In this situation, you become more aware of yourself when you act on the feedback of other people. Being ambitious makes you aware of your own expectations from yourself, and this would motivate you to do what needs to be done to achieve your aim. Thus, these values would help you enhance self-awareness. Number 2. Read self-help books. There are a number of self-help books available in the market. These books would give you insight into your own self. These books would also help you learn some techniques which you can apply in order to improve yourself. There are a number of books available on the internet as well. Meet a life coach. There are a number of life coaches these days who guide people and help them improve themselves. If you are determined to improve yourself and can hire a life coach, then it can help you a great deal. Self-effectiveness. According to Albert Bandura, self-effectiveness is the belief in one's capabilities to organize and execute the courses of action required to manage prospective situations. Role of self-effectiveness. A lot of people are aware of their goals, weaknesses, and strengths. Most of them also know how they can improve themselves, but they find it difficult when it comes to putting plans into actions. According to Bandura and other psychologists, a person's self-effectiveness plays an important role in how goals and challenges are approached by different people. Traits of people who have a strong sense of self-effectiveness. Number 1. They have a strong sense of dedication towards their interests and goals. They like to take challenges and face challenges in a positive manner. They recover quickly from setbacks and disappointments. They take a lot of interest in activities they are a part of. Traits of people who have a weak sense of self-effectiveness. They quickly lose confidence in their personal abilities. They quickly lose confidence in their personal abilities. They avoid challenging tasks. They focus on personal failures and negative outcomes. They believe that they are not capable of executing difficult tasks. Next, sources of self-effectiveness. During early childhood, children start forming self-effectiveness when they deal with various experiences and situations. Self-effectiveness keeps evolving throughout life as people experience various situations in their life and learn new skills. According to Bandura, there are 4 major sources of self-effectiveness, which are as follows. Number 1. Experiences. Good experiences help in the development of strong sense of effectiveness. When a person is able to perform a task successfully, it boosts his sense of self-effectiveness. However, when he fails to perform a task, it weakens his self-effectiveness. Thus, experiences affect self-effectiveness of a person. Number 2. Social modeling. When a person sees other people complete a task due to their sustained efforts, it makes the person feel that he too is capable of doing this work. Thus, he feels motivated to work hard, and this improves his self-effectiveness. Number 3. Social persuasion. It is not impossible to persuade people that they are capable to understand in a particular task. All that is that is a person who can motivate them to make an effort to perform the task. Think of that time when somebody's encouraging words made you achieve a goal in your life. It is because encouraging words have the power which can help people overcome self-doubt and focus on putting their best efforts. 4. Psychological responses. Mood, stress level, emotional situations affect a person's perception of his abilities in a particular situation. For instance, if a person becomes nervous before facing an interview, then he would develop a weak sense of self-effectiveness in similar situations. Thus, psychological reactions also influence self-effectiveness of a person to a great extent. Next, self-presentation. Self-presentation is a way in which a person behaves in a given social situation. People's self-presentations often represent the choice of the most desirable images from a set of alternative images. Factors that influence the desirability of an image are categorized into 4 components, which provide the specifications of the model. Number 1. The attractiveness of an image. Number 2. The perceived probability that the image describes the image object. Number 3. The perceived probability that the image is inaccurate. Number 4. The expected value of inaccurately attaching an image to an image object. These components are explained in detail and are used to create a formulation. D stands for desirability, equal to P in bracket A plus in bracket I minus P bracket close E, which allows the model to be applied to self-presentations, self-beliefs and beliefs in general. Motives that direct the self-presentation are instrumental and expressive. The first motive is instrumental, i.e. a person wants to impress other people in order to get rewards. The 3 instrumental goals are as follows. Number 1. Ingratiation. Under this goal, people try to exhibit their cheerfulness and good qualities to win people around them. Number 2. Intimidation. It is a goal in which a person tries to show anger so that other people listen to him and follow his instruction. Number 3. Supplication. Under this goal, a person tries to seem vulnerable and sad so that people around him feel bad for him and help him. The second motive is expressive. For instance, a person wishes to form an image with which he feels he would be able to claim his own identity in front of other people. Once he is able to form that image, his presentation and behavior are usually inconsistent with that image. If the person feels that somebody is trying to curtail his self-presentation expressiveness, he makes all the efforts to assert his independence. Though there are a number of strategies that are used to form an impression in front of others, yet almost all of them fall under 2 types: defensive strategies and assertive strategies. A person who follows defensive strategies tries to avoid threatening situations, whereas the person who uses assertive strategies shows active behavior like use of a number of status symbols, verbal idealization of the self, etc. Self-monitoring. Self-monitoring refers to monitoring competence or emotional self-regulation. Some people are high self-monitors, whereas others are low self-monitors. A person who is a high self-monitor is usually concerned about how others perceive him and would change his behavior in a particular situation in case he feels he would be or is being perceived negatively by others. Thus, he would change his behavior so that others perceive him positively. However, low self-monitor person is not concerned with others' perception about him and acts in a consistent manner. For instance, a low self-monitor would express his religious beliefs across situations, but a high self-monitor person is likely to say something other than his actual belief in case he feels situation demands it, and others might perceive in a negative manner if he states his true beliefs. Techniques of self-monitoring. Self-monitoring means that a person pays attention to those behaviors or habits in him which he feels are problematic and need to be changed. It also involves observing those stimuli which trigger the problematic behaviors or habits. Self-monitoring is of two types. Number 1, quantitative monitoring, and number 2, qualitative monitoring. A person who pays attention to quality of things which are happening, how certain things make him feel, how those things look like, etc., is perhaps using qualitative monitoring to change himself. However, a person who counts the number of things he repeats his problematic behaviors or habits is following quantitative monitoring. Though both types of monitoring are important, many people believe that quantitative monitoring is more effective. While using quantitative self-monitoring, a person identifies the behaviors or habits which he feels need to be changed. Then he finds out how he can count or measure the ones of those behaviors or habits and starts using this method in his day-to-day. When a person starts using this method of self-monitoring, he has a value idea of his problem. But once he starts applying the method, he comes to know the actual occurrence of his problematic behavior and finds out the stimuli that trigger those behaviors. The method of counting or measuring the problem depends upon the kind of problematic behavior or habit. For instance, if a person decides to change his wrong eating habits, he might choose to make simple recordings in a notebook each time he picks something to eat. The recordings may include what he is eating, how much time that he feels hungry apart from his regular meal timings, events that trigger his hunger, etc. However, if a person wants to count the number of times he says "you know" while speaking it, it would be cumbersome to make such recordings in a notebook, and in some cases it may not be possible. Thus, in this case, a person may choose to record his voice when he is talking to his friends and later on listen to the recording to find out the number of times he repeated the word and events that trigger him to use this word. After making all the recordings for a few days, he tries to analyze his recordings. Analyzing data may become difficult if recordings are not made in a proper way. Thus, it is important to make recordings properly, and some people might choose to represent the data at the end of each day in the form of histograms for this purpose. After analysis, a person may be able to find stimuli that trigger those behaviors or habits and rest of the information that help the person to make a plan in order to change or modify those behaviors or habits. In this manner, Gradually, people can sense their problematic behaviors or habits if they are determined till they achieve their goal. Next is limitations of self-monitoring. Qualitative self-monitoring is one of the efficient ways to sense problematic behaviors or habits. However, there are certain limitations of this method. One of the major limitations is that people can only monitor those things which they can observe and pay attention to. External behaviors such as eating habits, number of times you feel compelled to check your mobile phone to see if there are some calls or messages, etc., can be monitored if a person is determined to sense himself. However, internal behaviors such as whether a person is sweating or has fast heartbeat during anxiety or stressful conditions are difficult to self-monitor. Such behaviors also need to be monitored as people need to learn to cope with stress, else it may take a toll on their health. Impression management. Impression management refers to the activity in which information is controlled to guide others' opinions for personal or social goals. Although people are usually able to manage impressions of almost everything like branding of clothes, a political position, etc. Most often they try to manage the impressions others have of themselves. This is one of the subtypes of impression management, which is also known as self-presentation. Many studies show that impression management is often used by people when they want to influence other people, and it involves the overall quality of their life. There are mainly two reasons why people use impression management. First, it improves their self-esteem and helps them reduce some of the negative emotions related to low self-esteem. Second, it helps them maintain their private identity. Impression management is also used in order to describe various interpersonal communication phenomena such as communication with strangers, friends, doctor, and prospective employers. Some people feel that the term impression management is synonymous to self-presentation. However, studies show the difference between the two on the basis of intended goal direction and authenticity. Impression management focuses on goal-directed social activity in order to improve one's own image and power, whereas self-presentation focuses on self-relevant or real presentation. Attitude and values. Attitude. Dimensions of attitude. Dimensions of attitudes. A person's attitude comprises of three vital components: cognitive, affective, and behavioral. Number 1. Cognitive component, or I believe. Beliefs are accepted facts or truths about a person or an object. These beliefs are generally based on a variety of learning experiences, rumors, misunderstanding, or any other information. For instance, you may believe that your boss is intelligent or stupid, ethical or unethical, good or bad, autocrat or democrat based on your experiences or misunderstanding. The cognitive component is sometimes referred to as opinion. Number 2. Affective component, or I feel. It consists of the feelings, sentiments, moods, and emotions a person has towards an individual, event, object, or situation. This component is concerned with the evaluation and emotion, and it is often expressed as like or dislike, good or bad, pleasing or displeasing, favorable or unfavorable. The expressions of warmth, love, hate, etc. also belong to the affective component. It is this affective feature that is most commonly associated with the idea of attitude. For example, I hate putting on a suit for work. I really like working from home. Number 3. Behavioral component, or I intend. It is concerned with the way one intends to behave towards someone or something. Both the affective and cognitive components, feelings and beliefs, influence the way a person intends to behave towards an object. For instance, if a person has a negative feeling or belief towards an object, say junk food, he is likely to behave negatively towards the object. I am going to turn a new leaf and New Year and stop eating junk food. In other words, the behavioral component of attitude consists of the tendency to act or react towards an object in a specified way. Unable to lodge complaint with a customer service executive of an electronics company, he may shout, "I'll never call them again. I am not going to buy anything from this company in future. I'll not recommend this company's products to anyone." Next, characteristics of attitudes. Attitudes have following characteristics. Number 1. An attitude is the predisposition of an individual to evaluate some objects in a favorable or unfavorable manner. Number 2. The most pervasive phenomenon is attitude. People at workplace have attitudes about a number of topics that are related to them. These attitudes are firmly embedded in a complex psychological structure of beliefs. Number 3. Attitudes are different from values. Values are our ideals, whereas attitudes are our feelings, thoughts, and behavioral tendencies towards a specific object or situation. Number 4. Attitude is a predisposition to respond to a certain set of facts. Number 5. Attitudes are evaluative statements, either favorable or unfavorable, concerning the objects, people, or events. An attitude is a mental state of readiness, organized through experience, exerting a specific influence upon a person's response to people, objects, and situations with which it is related. Attitudes thus state one's predispositions towards given aspects of the world. They also provide an emotional basis for one's interpersonal relations and identification with others. Managers in organizations need to know and understand employees' attitudes in order to manage effectively. Attitudes do influence behavior of people and their performance in organizations. Next, functions of attitudes. Attitudes are known to serve at least 4 important functions in an organizational setting. Number 1. Attitudes determine meaning. A major part of what is seen in the environment and in other people's behavior is determined by attitudes. If one has an overall favorable attitude towards a person, one tends to judge the other person's activities as good or superior. On the other hand, negative attitudes or prejudices generally prompt disagreement with the individual concerned or failure to appreciate the good work done by him. Number 2. Attitudes reconcile contradictions. It is common to come across people who hold contradictory opinions. With the proper attitude as a background, intelligent people can reconcile or rationalize the same actions, which to others may seem obvious contradictions. For example, when a worker takes a little rest, a superior considers it idling. Number 3. Attitudes organize facts. As already seen, objective events can be differently perceived by different people because of difference in their attitudes. Meanings can be concocted and falsely communicated to others by changing the attitudes of the recipients towards wider social issues. Number 4. Attitudes select facts from the plethora of environmental facts and stimuli. One tends to select those which are in consonance with one's cherished beliefs and attitudes. Attitudes thus act as screens or filters. Next, values. Values, according to Milton Rockies, represent basic convictions that a specific mode of conduct or instead of existence is personally or socially preferable to an opposite or converse mode of conduct instead of existence. They generally identify a person's moral structure on which the concept of good or bad and right or wrong is based. Values are emotionally charged priorities and are passionately defended. Value system, according to Professor A. Dasgupta, is a framework of professional philosophy which governs and influences the individual's reactions and responses to any situations. These reactions and responses direct individuals in a society to selectively attend to some goals and to subordinate other goals. The value system develops from the cultural environment in which an individual is brought up. These values are highly stable and enduring, and once a value is internalized, it becomes consciously or subconsciously a standard or criterion for defining action, for developing and maintaining attitudes towards relevant objects and situations, for justifying one's own and others' actions and attitudes, for morally defining self and others, and for comparing self with others. Values determine what is right and what is wrong, where right or wrong is interpreted in terms of perceived values of the decision maker. Values sometimes overpower even objectivity and rationality. Understanding one's own emotions and self-defeating behavior. It is extremely important to understand how emotions drive behavior. Suppose you think something that happened to you in the past. If it was something that hurt or frightened you, it may cause you to react negatively to any situation that reminds you of that incident. On the other hand, if it was a happy memory, you will activate a very positive response when something similar occurs. There are many negative triggers that people have to deal with at one time or the other. Every individual handles them in a different way. Some people either walk away from the problem or turn a deaf ear. Some people do not want to face and deal with the situation and try to cope with the problem by making themselves unapproachable or by fleeing. Others might become argumentative, obstinate, and antagonistic. They subconsciously have chosen to take the offensive route rather than the defensive one. However, the only way to stop this from happening repeatedly is to take responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and reactions. The question arises, how does one do this? First, you need to recognize that you are reacting to a new situation because of a bad experience in the past. Once you accept that premise, you need to consciously sense the chain of thought that led you to this reaction. You are responsible for your thoughts, your emotions, and your reactions to them. Try to find an optimistic result of this negative experience objectively, instead of the subjective auto-response that has been controlling you. You may learn to avoid that pitfall in the future. You must also be conscious that you are not the only one who is driven to react because of past experiences. The person with whom you are facing the present problem may be facing the same demons or others. When you become aware that the emotions driving behavior in this instance are theirs and not yours, it becomes their responsibility to overcome them. You can cut the route to your involuntary responses of fear, anger, guilt, or frustration once you have figured out what drives your behavior. You need to sense your thought patterns to put a stop to the subconscious reactions to your past experiences. Often, the condition that triggers the reaction is not the same but just a reminder of it. Recognizing this, you would be able to deal with the present situation in a more successful manner. So, learn to recognize the triggers and your reasons to react incongruously to any given situation. Make sure you are not blaming yourself if it is the other person who is subconsciously reacting to his own past experiences. Find something positive to remember about that past situation that would allow you to cut your automatic responses to similar influence. Next, reactions of self to various life situations, achievements, frustration, failures, crisis. Sense of behavior that results from experiences is known as learning. A number of times people try to protect themselves from their desires by not only repressing them but also by developing conscious attitudes and behavior patterns that are just the opposite. For instance, a person who is lonely may develop "who cares how other people feel" attitude in order to cover up his feelings of loneliness and appetite for acceptance. Number 1. Achievements. Achievement behavior is an important part of self-development. When a person achieves something, he feels motivated to learn more so that he can achieve mastery in that field. Achievement helps a person to develop self-esteem, feeling of acceptance and self-worth. Experiences in childhood have a tremendous impact on the achievement behavior of a person. For instance, when an infant is able to perform sensory motor activities successfully, he starts developing achievement behavior. At this stage, the behavior of a child is unambiguous and concrete. However, as the child grows, his behavior becomes abstract and complex. During initial growing years, a child needs to make frequent attempts in order to achieve mastery in different tasks. A child may or may not be able to accomplish all tasks, thus he learns to take success as well as failures in his stride. However, how a child feels when he succeeds or fails is more important than his achievements and failures. Similarly, the child also develops self-esteem during childhood. When a child matures and enters teenage or adolescent age, he has a fairly framed self-concept and achievement behavior, which he develops through the responses of his parents, teachers, and peers. Number 2. Frustration. Frustration is a type of stress which occurs when one's efforts remain unfulfilled, dissatisfied, either by obstacles or by non-appearance of appropriate goal. Throughout life, we remain busy in gratifying our psychological and biological needs. Our life moves in a circle, and in this circle we satisfy our primary and secondary motives. Accurately, motivation is the primary activity or fundamental tendency of all the living organisms. Objective of this activity is maintenance and survival, and also the actualization of their potentialities. Many obstacles may interfere our goal-directed behavior. These obstacles may be environmental and personal. Whenever this happens, we become stressful, anxious, and distressful, and this state of mind is named frustration. Individuals' reactions are inclined towards the task or object which cause frustration. Number 3. Failure. Failure refers to the state or situation of not meeting a desirable or intended objective, and may be seen as the opposite of success. The criteria for failure are closely dependent on the context of use. A condition that is considered a failure by one might be considered a success by another. Similarly, different people can view the degree of success or failure differently. We should never be afraid of failures. Many people believe that we learn more from our failure than from our success. Failures reveal our weaknesses, which we can overcome and improve ourselves. When a person fails, he feels motivated to put in more efforts, and this increases his chances of success in the future. Next, crisis. Any event that leads to an unbalanced and dangerous situation is known as crisis. Crisis may affect an individual, group, community, or whole society, especially when they occur with little or no warning. Some of the characteristics of crises are that they are unexpected and non-routine events. According to Bennett, crisis is a process of transformation where the old system can no longer be maintained. Thus, need for change is another characteristic of crisis. It says when change is not needed, the event is described as failure and not crisis. Some crises like tsunami and volcanic eruptions are natural crises, whereas most of the crises are created by man. The crisis occurs when a person fails to predict the onset of crisis conditions. Thus, in this regard, crisis conditions can be prevented if people are alert and able to foresee the critical condition before it turns into crisis.